Good day, everyone. So, there's something that I have been thinking a lot about lately, particularly in this week, and it's especially about the conversations around performance marketing, demand generations, ROI, and everything leads to one central focal point, which is an attribution, right? And I think, uh, and I think people who are in this marketing domain or in the sales domain would definitely agree that not everything that influences a deal is attributable, and not everything that's attributable is what truly drove that value or that lead. Um, I didn't always believe that, or maybe I did not want to believe it. Uh, Especially when you work in demand generations, you are surrounded by the dashboards, the numbers, the graphs, the models that make everything feel knowable, uh, feels precise. Um, it's kind of a very satisfying field that when everything you see it in front of your screen, the dashboard is neatly tagged and measured. It's definitely a reassuring thing for marketers, and it's very comforting to attribute the efforts to a particular channel or a campaign or a thing that you have done, right? You start to rely on that system to make decisions, to justify the marketing spend, to tell the story of what's working and what is not working. But over time, I not only me, like most of the seasoned marketers began noticing that disconnect, right, between what the reports were telling and what things are really moving that needle. And you can able to sense that when you use that five whys technique, and you start questioning that if you see something that's helping in conversions, that is creating the conversions, you start asking at least five questions that starts with why. So the deal would come in, and the source field in the CRM would point to a paid search or a branded Google ad, right? Um, but the influence that resulted in that lead, it lives somewhere beyond that click, right? And to make marketing truly work, truly be a sustainable medium of getting the product or a service into that market for a good long time enough of period, we need to think beyond attribution, I feel, right? um, so the um, first let's see what are all the limitations of attributions first. um, and that's when it clicked. There is no single source of truth. Attribution is a system created for visibility, not for reality. And what we are seeing in front of us not necessarily need to be the reality, or at least not necessarily can cover the entire ground of the reality. It only shows you what's trackable for in the CRM or in the analytics or whatever the tool you are looking at for that dashboard, and that's not necessarily impactful, right? So I'm a big believer that there isn't report. I mean, it shows that only about 5% of your market is actively in the buying window at any given point of time. That means 95% of the people you are trying to reach will not convert right now, but they are still forming the impressions. They are being influenced through some campaigns, through some messaging, through some notifications. They are building awareness long before any touch point is logged into your system. And when they do enter a buying cycle, it often feels like they came out of nowhere. They came suddenly out of a blue. But in reality, that's not always the case, right? They were just invisible to your attribution model until that very last second. They have clicked on some link that you have neatly tagged or neatly added the UTM tag, or it's showing as a referral into your dashboard. So they are just invisible to your attribution model until that very last second you are able to see. right? So what attribution misses, and that's what makes attribution so tricky. We give credit to what we can see. It could be a last click to the last click. It could be a form fill. It could be a the campaign ID that shows up in the dashboard, and we overlook what we cannot see, the conversations, the trust building, the passive consumption that slowly shifted someone's mindset. We end up optimizing for visibility instead of value. We don't actually know like what is that moment, what is that trigger, what is that influence that made that people to move to act. I have also seen that reverse happen more often than I would like to admit. To be in fact, to be very frank, we will run a campaign and that performs beautifully on the spreadsheet. It will have a great click-through rates. It will have a very good solid conversions. The leads are coming in, but when those leads hit the sales pipelines, it usually stalls there. They don't show any urgency, they don't show any fit. um, the lead doesn't show any interest in moving forward with the payment. And then the same question always follows: did this campaign really work, or did it just look like it did? And we as a marketer, more I mean those who are not that familiar with these kind of attributions and influences may start to puzzle that why, even though we have done everything in the right way, and what we have expected happened, until the realization comes in that the leads come in did not turn into a customer, right? So there is a gap between performance and impact. It's easy to measure what is moving faster, like for a PPC campaign, for example. It's harder, but it's harder to measure what's meaningful, right? Vanity metrics or thriving in these kind of environments. Attribution tools will happily give you a list of top performing channels, but that list doesn't tell you which touches created intent or trust or belief in your product, or just make them convinced that your problem is the perfect solution for their problem. It just tells you where the click came from. And so over time I have to let go of the idea finally, that attribution alone cannot guide strategy, right? I still use it. We still use it. We all still use it. In fact, the enterprises spend a hell lot of money on marketing mix modeling. um, there are so many machine learning based attributions, like Google's data driven attributions. We definitely need that. My point is not to tell that we don't want attribution, but I treat it more like a mirror than a map. We use the map to know where we are standing at, to know where we which paths we have crossed to come here, and where we need to move forward to reach that destination. But mirror shows what is present in that particular scene. It will not give you that bird's eye view, or it will not give give you the look of that whole forest that tells you where you need to go to get out of that forest. So it reflects the part of the journey for sure, but not the entire picture of it. um, like the nuances, the context, the emotions, you only get by listening to your audience, right? Particularly those who are living outside of that 5% window. That could be understood by talking to prospect, talking to sales, talking to the existing buyers, in asking that what is the timeline, can you recreate that scenes that led you to this, to our product or our service. By being in the same places, your audience hangs out every when they are not ready to buy, even when they are not ready to buy. So uh, what influence really looks like. So I'm speaking a lot about influence, but what it really looks like, if you are leading a demand generation or brand or whatever the domains in marketing, maybe the most important shift is this: stop asking only what drove the conversion, and start asking what built the conditions required for it to happen in the first place. One small recommendation I would like to share, and something that has worked really well in terms I've been part of, is to add simple that open-ended feel uh, to your form, like a demo form or a get in touch form. It's to add that field called how did you hear about us. We all know that it's not perfect, but it gives you signals that attribution tools misses. Over time, patterns emerge. You will see a podcast come up again and again, or you will see that they are mentioning that their colleague has referred you, or you will see that we have seen you on the event, or that one influencer you haven't paid attention to have mentioned your brand name in their podcast or something, or a surprising amount of mentions from a customer community you have never even um, taken seriously. See, these insights are really good. Uh, there is another recommendation I would like to recommend is that building a feedback loops with your sales team, not just to share the leads, but to share stories. You can ask them about what they are hearing, what objections are showing up early, what content actually gets used in deal cycles, which leads seem genuinely engaged before the first call. That layer of human context, like often tells you more than any spreadsheet or any CRM dashboard can tell you, and that I can definitely guarantee you. So let's take a comparison about what is attribution and different with contribution. One of the biggest shift I have to make in how I think about marketing is learning to look beyond that click, not to ignore that click, but I'm just saying that look beyond that click, just to see it for what it really is, a moment, a signal. And I'm not telling, by a moment, I'm meaning it as a moment, not the whole scene. By signal, I'm meaning just the signal, not the source of that signal. Because if you focus only on what's measurable, only on what's being displayed on your dashboard, you will miss what's meaningful, what's creating that impact. And in marketing, especially today's marketing, um, meaning often lives outside of the dashboard. The I'm sure you will agree that the marketing landscape is shifting so rapidly and dynamically, and I'm sure you will also agree that marketing often lives outside of the view of the dashboards, if you know what I mean. So to start thinking differently, I found it helped to adapt a few mental models, not not a theoretical things, but these mental models I always used to get a refresher um, of how to think beyond it. I'm not here to give you that exact piece of the puzzle. I'm just trying to create the mental models that I use when I am when I want to force myself to think beyond the attributions things. So one thing that helped me is thinking in layers, not lines. So we are all used with lines. We see bar graph, we see pie charts and everything. So instead of imagining the buyer's journey as a straight path from from awareness to action, I try to see it as a series of layers. Uh, you can see that some layers can be very thick, some layers can be very thin, some layers stick to a pretty good amount of time. Some layers have a very short shell life, but they usually happen after a buildup of small inputs. It could be a reading a blog post, hearing your brand's name mentioned in a conversations, or a Slack community, or an internal employee have shared your or your website's link over a Microsoft Teams chat, or your brand has been mentioned by some speaker speaking in an event. So these inputs rarely get attention in the reports, but they do the quiet work of warming up your prospects. So if we only measure the trigger, that we undervalue everything that made that trigger possible, right? um, that's the mental shift from attribution to contribution. So attribution primarily asks this question, that what caused this. It wants a clean answer, it wants a very direct answer. But whereas the contribution asks you what helped move this forward, it makes room for that complexity, it makes room for that new questions to be question or to be answered. It allows for multiple factors to matter. And when we start thinking in terms of that contribution, we begin to see the value of channels that is not converting, but consistently educating, consistently giving that impact, giving that comfort, giving that curiosity to the prospects, which will eventually push them one day into your that 5% ready to buy window, right? um, there is another model I would like to add upon is that resonance over reach. It's easy to caught up with numbers, impressions, followers, clicks, and all, because they are right in front of us, right? Anyone can pull it up and say, hey, I this number looks fantastic, or this is not working at all, we need to think something beyond this and all. But reach does not mean impact. A very simple podcast episode that stays with someone can be powerful than 1,000 impression from a display ad. When something resonates, it sticks into it sticks into that person's mind, and when it sticks, it shapes how people see you, even if they don't act on it right away, right? Then another mental model, that's also something to be said for it, is that I see marketing as a kind of gardening and not hunting. Hunting look for quick wins, right? It measures success in terms of how precisely you aim the target, um, how how faster you move to capture that prey, how fast we can get to deal, how efficient is the path, and all these things. But if you think about gardening, the gardening takes time. It's slower. You need more patience. You plant seeds through kind of a brand storytelling. You water them with helpful content. um, you let relationship grow in their own time. Mindset helps marketers um stay committed to a long term value, even if when it doesn't show up immediately in a pipeline. So speaking about mindsets, there is another mental model that I really like in thinking in half life. Every marketing effort has a differential life. A paid ad can drive a spike, but it will decay very fast. A strong brand impression or a great product experience that keeps lingering into the prospect's mind, it may influence a decision weeks or months later. If you're only measuring the short tail of the performance, you will eventually miss the long tail of the influence, right? um, yeah, so influence helps you. All of these mental models have something in common. They widen your field of view. When we talk about attribution, you look at like this, like literally you look like this, because the attribution is in your dashboard in front of your screen. But they but if you talk about influence, they widen your field of view, right? It's like fitting a wider lens into your DSLR camera. So they help you see beyond the short term and acknowledge the full range of what your marketing might be doing, not just what you are tracking, right? And they create space to invest in influence deliberately, not as a hopeful byproduct, but as a necessary function. So when you are allocating time or budget or team's efforts, please ask yourself, are we investing in what creates momentum and only what captures it? Are we building a brand people remember, or just launching campaigns people might click and end up buying it? So that's a very wild spray and pray kind of thing. So yeah, so what are all the kind of questions that marketing leaders face? It's not about rejecting the performance. It's about redefining it, bro. So um, what actually drive the traffic lead? Why is sentiment rising in MQLs or flat? uh, how do we prove the podcast we are running is worth it? Can we define the strategy with what visible ROI? So about recognizing same things that marketing does will never show up in a report, right? But they will show up in the room, in the conversations, in the sentiment, in trust, and all. So maybe that's enough to remind us that good marketing does just not necessarily just create the clicks. It should earn belief, right? um, so, and finally, trust that some of the most important marketing you will do uh, won't look like a performance at all. It is a seed that you are sowing today and will have exponential outcomes in a near future. It will not generate an immediate pipeline. It will not always be attributable, but it will definitely shape that perception about your brand. It will earn trust. It will plant that seed for future growth. So that kind of work doesn't always get celebrated. It is usually the quiet hustle, the long term efforts that you are putting into. Sometimes it is true that it's sometimes harder to define in a quarterly review maybe, but it's often that difference between a brand people notice and a brand people can actually remember. So no, not everything that influences a deal is attributable, and not everything that's attributable truly drive that value. Not That's not a failure, definitely. That's just the reality of how people buy. Uh, we we cannot we cannot we cannot dictate the market that we are in, but rather we can definitely learn how it behaves, right? And to learn how it behaves, we again need to go beyond. We have to widen the field of vision that we are looking into, beyond the attribution. That's what's the point about this video. The more we work with that truth instead of going against it, the better our marketing becomes. So yeah, that's all for today. And I'm sure you will like this episode. And if you do like it, please give a thumbs up. And I'll see you in another video. Thank you so much. Take care.